This time I'll make a motion for the directed verdict. We're going to start with the marijuana charge. I have to be honest, this is the first marijuana charge where we don't actually have any marijuana. The county has never produced, never introduced any substance to contain marijuana. And the officer says he had a substance that looks like marijuana. But it's hard to imagine that someone could be charged for possession without an actual witness to say, I pulled it off Miss Williams and she had possession of this. The officer just said that the jail handed it to him. We just watched a video by an officer who searched her pockets and she didn't pull out anything, and that officer didn't testify she found any marijuana. In addition, while tests are not required, I do believe that the county has a burden for possession of marijuana to say she possessed it and it was actually in fact marijuana. And we don't even have that substance before the court. And I got to say, you at least have to introduce the weed to say that it's weed or marijuana. On the basis, are you going to go one at a time or just?
Well, you don't have to produce the weed to say it's marijuana. I mean, it gets, lots of times it gets used up by the lab. But regardless, we're relying on one person saying that it was marijuana. He's a police officer. He has experience in it. Cross-examination on it was done, but he testified that it was marijuana that was seized on her.
I think he said he didn't get it from her. He believed the jail gave it to him. So I think that person...
No, that was a different officer.
Okay. I'm going to find that they've met their burden as to, I think it was Officer Rodner testified that it was 5.6 grams of marijuana, and I think that, viewing the evidence in the light most favorable for the Commonwealth, that they have bypassed the motion for a direct verdict on that issue.
Disorderly conduct. There has not been not one outside of a police officer who testified that this conduct was disorderly. I think the preamble, I think the statute is very clear. Disorderly conduct cannot be against the police alone.
Yeah, and you've made this reference, but I'm trying to find where's the authority on the fact that the police officers can't say that they were involved in disorderly conduct.
I'll cite to Hartman v. Moore, where it says the defendant judge cannot be convicted for inciting a riot or disorderly conduct where she has really used profanity, swear words, obscenities towards law enforcement, or yells at law enforcement. In addition, you look at the preamble, let me find it real quick. In the preamble, then we look at the construction of the statute, it makes it very clear that that cannot be used against police officers alone.
Okay. You want to address that argument?
Well, I think we added plenty of proof here. Can I see the arrest report of the citation? I guess I assume from reading this that the disorderly conduct, which is the second charge, is creating a condition which causes public alarm. Is that where we're focused on?
I guess so, through the citations.
Okay. Well, the conduct outside the barrier and the screaming outside the barrier can lead to disorderly conduct. Disorderly conduct can be created by language, and all language is a protected right. You can create disorderly conduct with language, and she's clearly done that in this case.
I need the cite from you as far as the word you're saying.
See the finger?
Okay, I got your finger. Is it center and cause of disorderly conduct In most common cases by which an individual can make a public nuisance of themselves, such as actual acts of behaviors tending to threaten the public generally, should again be stressed that the statute requires public alarm as distinguished from private alarm. For example, a person may not be arrested for disorderly conduct as a result of activity which annoys only the police. The statute is intended to cover the situation in which a private citizen engages in an argument with the police so long as the argument proceeds without offensive, coarse language or conduct which intentionally or wantonly creates a risk of public disturbance. The statute is not intended to cover the situation in which a private citizen engages in an argument with the police so long as the argument proceeds without offensive, coarse language. Well, I mean, if that's the authority you're relying upon, there's all kinds of offensive, coarse language with the police officers. So, I mean, is that what you're saying? That because I'm reading this language in the statute, and the statute is the person is guilty of disorderly conduct in the second degree when in a public place with the intent to cause public inconvenience, noise, alarm, or harm, or wantonly creates the risk thereof. Making unreasonable noise, there's all kinds of video evidence of that. Refuses to obey official order to disperse, maybe not so much that with her, or creates hazardous or physically offensive coordination that serves no legitimate purpose. So, condition. I'm thinking the authority that you cited has that caveat for offensive language with police officers, so I'm going to find that Commonwealth has met their burden just with regard to a directed verdict on disorderly conduct. Moving along, resisting arrest.
Yeah, I think resisting arrest is not just putting your arms in front of you. She has to have some kind of she has to engage in conduct. This is KRS 520.090. A person is guilty of resisting arrest when he intentionally prevents or attempts to prevent a peace officer recognized to be acting in the code of law from effecting an arrest in the code of law by another, using or threatening physical force or violence against a peace officer or another, or using any other means creating substantial risk of causing physical injury to the peace officer or another. Not one officer articulated that she did that. The only thing they said the basis was that she put her arms in front of her. Not one officer said that she did any of this. The only thing they kept saying is that she put her arms behind her back, and it took them several seconds to put the handcuffs on her. I think as a matter of law, this case should be dismissed.
We have a video showing that she's resisting. I mean, it's not just what an officer said. It shows very clearly that she's resisting. And she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to do anything that they were telling her. And so she was struggling, and they had to put her on the ground because of it.
We actually didn't see a video of her.
I didn't see a video of her being put on the ground, but...
Well, yeah, we did. Well,
we didn't. And what I'm saying is using or threatening use of physical force. So I asked every officer, did she use or threaten to use physical force? They all said no.
But here's what the testimony did say. It was Officer Palmer and Officer Ryder both testified, and I think viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to Commonwealth that she used her arm, put her arm across in an effort to not be handcuffed and didn't comply. That was generally their testimony. So I believe that they have, bypassed that part.
Well, Judge, for the record, I think...
I appreciate it. Go ahead and get your objection in, but that's going to be
the use of physical force. It's not just... I think in the beginning it says intentionally prevents or attempts to police officer from doing it. But threatening to use physical force or violence.
Using physical force. So she used physical force. Whether or not it's violence, I think that they bypass that. But it's the use of physical force. It's an either or. So I think just based upon the statute that they have bypassed this burden in viewing the light in the very most favorable view for the Commonwealth. So I don't know.
One, I think you have to have followed the war, that video. We don't actually have the actual number of people arrested. We don't know that. You have to have followable person create or engage in riots. You have to create grave danger of property damage, personal injury, or substantial obstruction of government function. There's not been one, I think the administrator didn't testify to any government obstruction. No one testified to property damage or personal injury. And you have to engage in language that incites violence. We watched the entire video. There's not one person who's inciting people to engage in violence. At best, they can say they have to use extra personnel to obstruct, to I guess, police the protest, but that's a personal choice. There's no one there like blocking the ambulance or preventing people from being arrested. I think in this statute, it's not just people laying down on the sidewalk. So I think it requires more. I think Ms. Williams has to tell people to damage property, to burn down the city, let them rain. I think some of the authority for this is when you look at that it also protects free speech without allowing the situation to develop to a point where there's clear and present danger of a riot. So in this case, I mean, the reality is, in this case, there's not one person, not one officer testified that anybody engaged in any violence. I went through painfully each officer and asked him, when did they engage in any violence? All of them said none. Thurman at best said we had to use extra law enforcement to police the protest. That is still not obstruction lawful functions. No one blocked a police officer from going to an emergency call. No one stopped someone from engaging in law enforcement. At best, they could say, she said, use dead weight can effectuate an arrest, but that doesn't rise to the level of riot. At best, it may be facilitation to resisting arrest. I just think when you think of a riot, it's a lot more than what was considered in this case. Like, for example, what we saw in the Capitol of last year.
Yeah.
In addition, I don't think they actually have a number of people arrested, so I think the statute does require them to state how many people arrested have to be filed in
The
more.
last officer said 14 were,
No.
or them ones.
Well, the video showed more than 5 been arrested, but if you want to respond to...
Well, he keeps citing violence as the reason for disorderly, for the resisting arrest. There's 3 parts that you can find somebody guilty of inciting a riot, and one of them he avoids, but urging people to disregard a lawful order that is clearly. He's saying, no, that's not. Well, let's read it. Let's read the statute. It does say it. That's a way to do it, and that's what we're relying on. It's not the violence, and we show clearly that she's urging them to commit this offense, which is avoiding the police or disregarding the lawful order of the police.
Okay. Let me just cite you a case. It's interesting. I'm reading this. It's Nicaragua versus Trump, which is it's part of the notes here, 273 F Supplement 3rd, 719, where the presidential candidate was ended up being President Trump, said, get him out of here. And that speech was not constitutionally protected speech per his finding, and he could have been liable for inciting a riot. Because he's encouraging or urging tumultuous and potentially violent behavior. So I think this is one I've struggled with for a bit. So, hand in hand, and that could be absolutely wrong. But the statute says a person is guilty of inciting to riot when she incites or urges 5 or more persons to create or engage in a riot. So by that language, I don't necessarily find that a riot must occur, but I think that they met their burden by looking at the evidence most favorably for the Commonwealth and the fact that she was in bullhorn outside police barricades were telling people to make it hard for the police. I think that, by that sense of urging, that satisfies the requirements as far as looking in the light most favorable Commonwealth. So that's my finding. So I'm going to deny a direct verdict.